Good morning, I'm Richard, I'm a diabetic, and over the last couple of years I've received an awful lot of questions in relation to my diabetes and the way that I treat it, and my history with the diabetes. So I thought I'd cover a few of those on video today, just so that I can share my experiences with you. Hopefully you'll learn something from it. Please feel free to ask questions below. I'm not worried about answering any questions. If I don't know, I'll be honest about it. I'm not a doctor, but I've got a fair bit of experience here. If you have any comments or you'd like to subscribe, then please do so. I've got all the questions on my trusty phone, so excuse me if I look at these a little bit. Okay, so the first question I've had is, how old am I and how old was I when I was diagnosed? Well, I'm 46. We're currently in the COVID-19 shutdown at the moment, so it's the year's 2020, and I was diagnosed in 2010, so I was 36 when I was diagnosed. So yeah, pretty much another month and it'll be my 10-year anniversary of being diabetic. Okay, what type of diabetes do I have? As in some places I've said I'm type 2 and others I've said I'm type 1. Now this is a good question. In 2010 when I was diagnosed as a type 2. It was a bit of an odd one. I had 2 diabetic nurses and a GP and a consultant at the time. The 2 diabetic nurses, and I very often saw them together, they would say, I'm a classic type 1. The GP would say, I'm a classic type 1. My consultant, now bearing in mind that she ran a few of the tests and stuff, said, no, you're a type 2. So my medical record always showed that I was a type 2. My treatment was always done on the basis that I'm a type 2. Fair enough, I accepted that. As time went on, about 2 years ago, it just came in my mind that I'd get this reconfirmed because I was on insulin anyway, even though I was a type 2, but life would have been easier if I could have just moved over to tablet or diet-based control. I'm an HGV driver, so for me it would have been much easier to have not had to take insulin. So I went back to my consultant, said, look, if I'm a type 2, can I stop insulin? She had a look through my notes, said, I don't see why not. So she prescribed a tablet for me, and it had minimal effect on me, but control was fractionally better, I would say. I was starting to push her to introduce another tablet to try and get things under control. It was going to be an SGLT2. And in this time that I was pushing her, I had to go and see my DVLA consultant to renew my driving licence. And I said, oh, this might be the last year that I see you. And he said, oh, why is that? And I said, well, I'm hoping to come off insulin, so I won't need to see you again. And he looked at my notes and said, no chance, you're never coming off insulin. He says, if you were my patient, he says, I would instantly reclassify you as a type 1. So I went away and chased my consultant. She referred me to another consultant. They did C-peptide testing and a couple other tests, and the other consultant finally came back and said, well, you're producing barely enough insulin to keep a mouse alive, so you're being reclassified as a type 1. So this is why in some places I've referred to myself as a type 2, because that's what I was at the time, as far as my medical record said, but I am now reclassified as a type 1. So I hope that clears that. Right, next question. What do we have? Okay, there's sort of two questions that are very closely linked, so I'm going to roll them into one. It says, what method of treatment do I have and how many times do I inject per day? Right. My diabetes treatment is purely and simply insulin. I'm on what they call MDI, so multiple daily injections, basal bolus with carb counting. So I have Tresba, which I take at night. I currently take 24 units of that per night. I should really take a little bit more to have slightly better control, but what I find is I have a very physical job, so if I take any more, when I'm at work, my blood sugar levels crash quite rapidly if I'm not careful. When I get home, when I sit on the sofa, put my feet up, have a coffee, then my levels start to go high again. So this is an issue for me. I should only have really the 4 injections a day, so 1 injection, the bolus with each meal, and the basal at night. But because my levels are going high, particularly during the evening, or if I've got a quieter day at work, then I take anywhere 8 to 10 injections a day just to keep things under control. So as I've said, I use Tresba at night, and I'm currently on Fiasp for my bolus injections. I just find that for my lifestyle that the Fiasp with its slightly faster action has been better for me. So I hope that answers that one. Now, this is a question that I get asked a lot. Slightly different forms of it. It bugs the hell out of me, and the next person that asks me it, I may very well punch them repeatedly in the face. But here we go. Do I know diabetes can be reversed by doing? And it's normally by losing weight, by changing diet, or doing more exercise. So it's one of those 3 variants. This comes down to a lot of people not understanding that there's more than one type of diabetes. Maybe if you're a type 2 and it's being brought around through poor diet or lack of exercise, you know, you're really big, chunky and fat, then yes, losing weight, doing exercise, changing your diet may well reverse that. And there's been plenty of people that I've read on forums that have either gone into remission or completely been discharged by their GPs with perfectly good non-diabetic HbA1cs. But as I say, a lot of people don't realise there's more than one type of diabetes. Type 1 means that your autoimmune system has attacked your pancreas. You've ceased producing insulin, so no amount of diet or losing weight or anything like that will cure your diabetes. That's it, you're on insulin for life. Okay, there's no reversing it. It's a shame, I wish there was. There may well be in the future, you know, there may well be the option to have a replacement pancreas or something like that, but that doesn't exist at the moment. So, you know, no, I cannot reverse my diabetes by doing more exercise. I'm already not an underactive person anyway. You know, I have a very physical job. I'm not big and fat, all right, you know, I'm not exactly small, but I've got a low BMI of about 22. My consultant doesn't want me to lose any more weight, you know, because they reckon that I would be at risk if I did. You know, I just wish that some people sometimes would understand that there's more than, well, even the 2 types of diabetes, there's all sorts of types. So whilst I jest, I might punch someone in the face. You know, I wouldn't actually do that, but it's one of the questions that annoys me most. But I get asked it. How do you test your blood sugars? Well, I'm in the UK, I'm an HGV driver, so by law I have to use a blood glucose meter. HGV drivers are not allowed to use CGMs like the Dexcom, or I do actually have a freestyle Libre attached to my arm right there. We're not allowed to use that for the purposes of driving. So back here somewhere, I use officially the Contour Next One. It's a very good meter. The reason that I use that is that it's able to store over 1,000 blood glucose records on it, which when I go for my DVLA consultants meeting every year to renew my driving licence, I have to present a full 3 months worth of blood glucose tests, and I have to test in relation to my driving. So I have to, if I'm driving that day, I have to test every 2 hours for driving purposes. For any other time, I've used a mixture of the Dexcom G6 and the Freestyle Libre. I've got a bubble attachment on it at the moment, which makes it work like a CGM. It's not as reliable or as accurate as the Dexcom. If I had the choice, would use the Dexcom, because in the times that I've used it, it is very, very accurate. But we are in the COVID-19 shutdown at the moment, so there's not as much overtime as there was. The Dexcom is not available on prescription in the UK. So, you know, have to be sensible and have to be a little bit careful with money. So I'm using the Libre at the moment. It does the job pretty much. It can be up to 2 millimole out all the time, but I know which way it's out. It's pointing me in the right direction as to when I'm having highs and lows. My computer says I'm currently high, I'm 11.6. If I was to do a finger stick test now, that would probably come back and say that I'm around about 10 millimole. So I at least know, what area I'm in. The Dexcom, when I had it, it was never more than half a millimole out, and it worked flawlessly. But to get that in the UK, it's £159 a month to run that. I wish dearly that I could have it, but I can't. So blood glucose meter at the moment for driving purposes is where I have to do it. Okay, next question sort of ties in to the same. It says, Libre or Dexcom, what's the difference? Well, the primary difference between the two is the Dexcom is what they call a CGM, which is constant glucose monitoring. So you can have an app on the phone or a handheld controller, and the blood glucose is sent to that every 5 minutes. If your blood glucose is rising or falling very fast, or you're getting low, or you're having an urgent low, it'll set an alarm off for you to let you know that you are getting low and that you need to look at it. The Libre is what they call a flash glucose monitor. So you bring up an app on your phone, which I'll do now. You say, I want to scan, and then you scan the sensor, and it comes up, and like here it says I'm 11.8. The whole process took about 30 seconds to do, so it's not instantaneous, and there's no alarms if you're going high or low. Unless you scan this sensor, you don't know what's happening. Like I say, I've got an additional element on there, which is this part here. That's a Bluetooth transmitter. It's called Bubble. There's a few others, Bluecom by Ambrosia, the Myo is another one that is available. that sort of converts it into a sort of CGM. So you can have the low alarms, it can wake you up in the middle of the night if you're having a hypo. It's all very good. But as I said in the previous question, the readings aren't as accurate as what the Dexcom are. So through choice, I would use Dexcom. This will do the job. Would I get a pump? Which one is the next question. The answer to that is I've actually been referred to the local hospital, to the pump clinic, with consideration of getting a pump. Two brands that I know are available locally are the Tandem T-Slim and the Omnipod. I'm not sure whether it's the Omnipod original or whether it's the Dash, because I've not been to the clinic yet. The reason that I would be keen to go onto the pump is because as an HGV driver, I can either have a fairly quiet day or I can have a very busy day, dependent on what load I've got on. So if I increase my basal injection at night, and then I turn up at work and I find I have a really busy day, then I'm battling hypos all day long. If I take less, then I'm battling hypos all day long if I have a quiet day. With a pump, I can have a basal rate that will be more suitable to me. So yes, I would consider a pump. I have been referred to the clinic and it's something that I'm looking at the moment. Hopefully, I mean, we're in May at the moment. My pump appointment is in July. I don't know how long it takes to get a pump thereafter. Right. The next two questions sort of roll into each other as well. Do I ever suffer diabetes burnout? And do I ever get down or depressed about being diabetic? I think the simple answer to that is yes. I wouldn't say I get depressed, but I do suffer the occasional bout of burnout. And I think that any diabetic that says otherwise is possibly lying. A lot of people don't realise that diabetes is a chronic illness. It's with you 24/7. It's not a case of you get up in the morning, you do a blood test, you have breakfast, and say to yourself, let's have an injection to go with it. It doesn't end there. You've got to consider exactly how much I'm eating, exactly how much should I inject. Am I going to be doing anything physical after breakfast? Am I going out? And then if you are going out, what do I need to take with me? Do I need to take food? Do I need to take my test meter, my everything else? And then how long am I going out for? Because, have I got enough supplies for the time that I'm going to be out? And then even when you're out, it's like, oh, I better do a blood test because, I don't know what's happening. My level's falling. I've got a slight twinge in my head. Is that because I'm getting low, or is it just because, it's a little bit colder outside than I expected it to be? So it's with you all day long. You think about it all day, you think about it all night. It's there all the time. And for me, when I'm feeling a little bit down with it, I get a little bit slack with my injections. So I could get in bed at night feeling absolutely knackered and get into bed and think, done, I've forgotten to take my insulin or do a blood test. And then I just lay there and think I can't be asked to do it. So I go to bed not even knowing what my levels are. I also can get to the point where I eat things that I shouldn't. So, I'm there thinking, well, I've had a couple of bad days, I've really got to behave, I really shouldn't have anything else to any snack or anything like that, sit down on the sofa and it's there in the back of your mind, you know, I've got to eat something, I've got to eat something, I've got to eat something, and the next thing I'll be in the kitchen and I'll be stuffing my face. And it does get so bad sometimes that, you know, I'll go to bed with blood sugars in the 20s, 30s, you know, so high, you know, raging headache and feeling really unwell. How do I get out of it? You know, it's a difficult one. I would recommend anyone, you know, should really have someone to talk to. But I've always been someone that holds my feelings in. I've never really shared my feelings with anyone. So, you know, I sort of hold all that in. For me, I just find that doing things that I enjoy are very, very helpful. You know, I've got hobbies, or go out on the motorbike, or, you know, I'm a bit of a tech geek sometimes, so sit down and try and do something on the computer, or something that will just keep my brain occupied, take it off of what's getting me down. And I've always got through it, but yes, I do suffer from burnout every now and again. Like I say, I think sensibly anyone with any form of chronic illness probably does. Do I work out? Do I look like I work out? I think the answer to that is no. All right, I've got a little bit of muscle on the arm. These aren't pecs, these are boobs. I'm not overweight, but no, I don't work out. I've just got a fairly physical job, and I've always been someone that when I'm fairly physical, I build muscle relatively well. So, you know, up around the shoulders, the top of the arms and that. I tend to build the muscle, but also there's very, very little fat. So, you know, even in the places where I'm supposed to stick the Libre, you know, I've got muscle here and up here, and it leaves very little space to stick the Libre sensor if I'm not careful. But no, I'm a lazy git, I don't work out. Okay, now this is a good one, and I think it's something that probably every diabetic has asked themselves, what should they do? Okay, and it's, do I tell my employer I'm diabetic, and do I feel supported by my employer in relation to my diabetes, and do they understand the difficulties of being diabetic? Well, let's start with the first part of that question. Yes, I tell my employers I'm diabetic. I've not got a lot of choice in my HGV job, because obviously it affects my driving licence. So the first question they would have is, why does my driving licence only last for 12 months, where everyone else's lasts until they're like 76 or whatever it is. But also, I'm going to have appointments throughout the year. I might, and I've never had it yet, I might have unexpected illnesses related to diabetes or something like that. So I feel that if I've been honest and upfront with them about it, that when I turn up and I plonk a letter on their desk that says I've got my diabetic eye screening next week, they just schedule the time off for me. It's not an issue. Even before I was the HGV driver, I still told my employer, look, I'm diabetic, it shouldn't affect me too much, but I may have more hospital appointments in a year than most other people. Generally, I've not had one not accept that yet. Right, what was the other? And do I feel supported by my employer? this sort of rolls into this third part of the question, and do they understand the difficulties of being diabetic? No, I don't 100% feel supported by my employer, because I don't think they understand the difficulties of being diabetic. Like I say, a lot of people assume, oh, he's diabetic, he's just got to eat a good diet, not eat any sugar, things will be fine. I think if they knew the realities of, how serious it is, the fact that, if you don't get things right and you take the wrong dose of insulin, for example, before going to bed, you just may not wake up in the morning, and that's how serious it can be. So no, I don't feel supported, because they don't understand it. I get the support in the fact that I get time off when I need it for my appointments, but if I try to tell them anything diabetes related, then they're just a pack of nodding dogs. Yes, that's okay, we understand. Okay, next question. Is there anything I would do differently? Now, I don't know whether that relates to my diabetes, or whether that's life in general, but I think they're both very similar questions. The answer is I think everyone, if they look back on their life, there's things that they would do differently, and I don't think I'm different to that. I don't think there's a lot I could have done differently in relation to my diabetes, because I've been at the hands of my healthcare team a lot of the time on that one. Earlier in life, would I have eaten differently? Would I have done anything differently? Well, as I've discussed in one of the previous questions, being a type 1 diabetic, you don't bring it on yourself. No matter how much sugar or bad diet you have, that does not cause type 1 diabetes. So if I was to look back on it and say, well, maybe I'd have eaten a few less packs of crisps, or had a slightly better diet, that would not have prevented me being diabetic. So no, in that relationship, I probably would not have done anything different. Okay. Is there anything in life I wanted to do that my diabetes has prevented me from doing? Honestly, no. There hasn't. I mean, first of all, I got diagnosed slightly later in life. As I say, I was 36 at the time. Diabetes may have added complications, like my career choice at the moment as an HGV driver. It adds massive complications into that with getting and retaining the driving licence. And if there's any HGV drivers out there, or any prospective HGV drivers out there that are having issues with or questions in relation to HGV driving with diabetes, then please ask below. I may well make a separate video on that, just so that you can understand what you're going to need to do before you first apply for that licence, so that you don't get rejected by the DVLA, because they will refuse a licence if you don't get it right. So it's added complications, but all of the things that I've wanted to do, I've been able to do. Last year went out, bought myself an 1800cc motorbike. I go out, I enjoy that. It hasn't stopped me from doing that. I have pursued a career in HGV driving, which I wanted to do. I've got firearms and shotgun certificates. It doesn't affect any of that. So no, I just get on with life and do it. But I have to consider what I'm doing before I do it, to make sure that I do it as safe as possible. So good monitoring of my blood glucose levels when I'm out, particularly for making sure that I'm not going to go low. If I'm out somewhere with a firearm or a shotgun, I don't want to be falling over in a case of hypoglycemia and have someone come along and steal my firearms or whatever. And again, you know, same thing with the truck. I drive a 40-ton lorry. I transport explosive goods. So I don't want to have a case of hypoglycemia at the wheel, plough through a brick wall somewhere, and it's like a massive bomb going off. So care is needed, but no, it hasn't stopped me doing anything. Okay, and the final question here is, do I embrace technology in the treatment of my diabetes? Yes, I do. I right the way, for many years now, I've always been a sort of bit of a tech geek. I had some of the smartphones before even the iPhone was available. You know, some of the very first ones which ran on Windows PC version and things like that. And that's never gone away. I've said I would be interested in insulin pump, which obviously is very technical nowadays. I've always wanted the latest and greatest as far as blood glucose monitoring goes, so that it'll connect to my phones in Bluetooth and things like that. Right the way through to, you know, I've created things like this, which is my bedside clock, which shows my blood glucose right there. Right the way down to, you know, things like being an HGV driver. We're not allowed to touch our mobile phones or anything like that when we're driving. So I've even created things on my phone that I can talk to Siri, and it will tell me what my blood sugar is, what my trend is, whether I should take insulin or anything like that. So let's just see if that'll work now. Hey Siri, what's my status?
1 moment. Your current blood glucose is 11.1 millimole and your trend is flat. You have 0 grams of carbs and 0 units of insulin on board. It is suggested you need 6 units of insulin.
So I can do things like trigger that in the truck without touching the phone. I can do it on my Apple Watch as well. I just need to ask her what my status is, and it will come out through the watch as well. So yes, I do embrace technology. I'd be interested to see what technology comes out over the next couple of years. Early next year, hopefully the Dexcom G7, which should be smaller, cheaper, and hopefully more readily available to everyone. I'd be interested to see some of the advancements in insulin pump technology. Tandem in the States has just come out with Control IQ, which we don't have in the UK yet, and that puts a little bit more intelligence behind the running of the pump. There's talks that Omnipod are going to be integrating with the likes of Dexcom to give better control. So yes, I do embrace it. I do want to try new technology as it comes out, but unfortunately can't always afford these things. I do what I can, but you know, sometimes I have to just settle for watching videos on YouTube and, you know, being a little bit jealous. But you know, there's lots of other things that I watch on YouTube and the likes of and feel a little bit jealous about. So I think that's the end of the questions for now. If you have any more, write them below. If you'd like to follow me, then please subscribe. You know, I will be doing regularly slightly more videos on maybe some slightly more specific items of diabetes, like being an HGV driver and things like that. So you know, that might be worth watching. yeah, so ask any questions. I'll help if I can. I can put links to things that you may be interested in. Yeah, feel free. Thanks a lot. Take care now.